All right, everyone, I'm making this video because we're going to talk about how to solve linear equations that have the variable on both sides instantly. Now, I know that in a lot of schools, they often complicate things more than they should. And I've often told both teachers and students that don't make things more complicated than what they are. There is a formula. I'm going to get in the last part of this video, I will show you the long way that they teach in the schools. But first, since I know some of you always tell me to get to the point and make this video fast, this is going to be a method that you can use to solve equations that have variables on both sides. So there's a formula that you can use, and it's going to help you do it instantly. You can even, the more you practice this, you could even do it mentally as well. And when I was growing up, I oftentimes before I even realized I was going to become a mathematician in life, I realized that what was holding me back in many cases was techniques that were either in some ways more complicated than what they should be, or even non-mathematical at all. So I wasn't having a true mathematical understanding of things. I had teachers who said, do it this way, do it this way, do it this way. And there were kind of like a recipe. I call it Betty Crocker math rather than actual math understanding. So what you're doing in an equation, if you understand the laws of equations, you know that what you do to one side, you must do to the other side. You have to keep a balance. But I would get into it in this video, but again, this is just kind of a strategy video. So let's do an example. Let's say you had 5x plus 3 equals 4x plus 7. And if we apply the formula, let's label all our parts. This is going to be A, B, C, and D. So now all we have to do is apply what we know. If we do from the formula, if we do D minus B, that is 7 minus 3. And then we're going to divide A, which is 5, C, which is 4, we're going to subtract. Now we have 5 minus 4. And then basically 7 minus 3 is 4. 5 minus 4 is 1. 4 divided by 1 is 4. Done. Less than 10 seconds. I've timed it. Less than 10 seconds. And this works for every single formula that has, or form, I should say, not formula, but form of equation that has the variable on both sides. Now, typically, the way they teach this in schools is there's two ways they teach it. The way I'm going to show you now is sort of what I've seen in most, at least internationally, at least in the United Kingdom, and in some schools in the United States, but not all. What they do is they tell you to keep the x terms on one side. So that means that you have to remember that if you move the 4x to this side, you have to switch the sign. It's called transpose. So you have 5x minus 4x equals positive 7. But then if you keep the whole number, if I move my positive 3 to that side, I have to switch the sign. And so then I have 5x minus 4x. Those are like terms. So that becomes 1x or just x equals, and then we have the same answer, 7x equals 4. So this also works. And sometimes it'll be the same, just as fast, depending on how big your numbers are. But sometimes I find that with the formula here, you could do it even quicker. The other way that I've learned that I find it is a recipe for, it really bothers me, but I know that it's taught. The instructor, and you can let me know in the comments section down below, please let me know if your instructor says this. I've heard instructors say, okay, look at this and see which variable term is the smaller one. And then they do it vertically, and then they say, subtract the smaller variable term from both sides. So in this case, the smaller variable term is 4x. So they do minus 4x on this side, and then they do minus 4x on this side. And then they say, okay, 4x minus 4x is done, is 0. 5x minus 4x is just 1x. And then they say, bring down the 3. So you have x plus 3 equals, and then bring down your 7, positive 7. And then you solve this equation. You take away 3 on both sides. X plus 3 minus 3 equals 7 minus 3, which gives you x equals 4. Now, why on earth would you do that on an exam? Why on earth would you be, look at how many steps you have here. 1, 2, 3, before you get to the final answer. Actually, 1, 2, 3, 4, because if I count the both sides of the subtraction here. Now you saw in the example I showed you, the same with the method, less than 10 seconds. And then you have this. This is what I call, like I said, Betty Crocker math. This is a recipe for disaster. It's tasteless, and I understand why they do this. I understand, but it's not going to help students understand. And if you're a teacher, if you're a math teacher and you're listening to me, it is your duty as a math teacher, at least. I know most of you are not mathematicians, but at least as a math teacher, to make mathematics accessible to your students, to make your students become more efficient in their calculations. It's time to get away from these long periods of doing things and actually get to real understanding. For those of you who say you don't believe the formula works, let's do another example then. So you've seen that there are oftentimes more than one way to solve something in math. That's the beauty of it. But sometimes you want to make your life easier. So if we do another equation, let's say we have 5x plus 3 equals 6x minus 2. Eventually, you don't even have to label the parts, but I'll do it because since I'm showing you the formula, this is A, this is B, this is C, this is D. So now all I have to do, negative 2 minus B. Well, in this case, it's plus 3, but it's minus 3 then. Switch the sign, basically. Divided by 5 minus 6. Negative 2 minus 3 gives you negative 5. 5 minus 6 is negative 1. Negative 5 divided by negative 1 is positive 5. Done. Less than 10 seconds. X is equal to 5. And of course, you should always check. Go back and plug. Go back and plug it into the original equation. If they both equal each other, then you know it's a real solution. Now, imagine if you would have solved this using the long method, using the school method, which would have been, you can either have done, you could have brought your x's to the left side, which is okay. So one other method could have been 5x minus 6x, bring it to this side. So now you have 5x, take away 6x, equals negative 2, and then I switch the plus 3, I have to bring it to that side, minus 3. So I now have 5x minus 6x. This gives me negative x equals negative 2 minus 3 is negative 5. I have to now divide on both sides by negative 1, which gives me, well, this becomes positive x, so x is equal to 5. And of course, 5 times 5, 25, minus 6 times 5. So 25 minus 30 gives you negative 5. So it would have checked out originally. But that's a lot of work, even though this is not the worst method. But imagine doing it the way I've seen taught in some public schools, which is basically they ask you to subtract vertically the smaller variable term. So the smaller variable term here is 5x. So then you subtract on both sides the 5x. Minus 5x, minus 5x. This gets rid of this. You bring down the 3. 6 minus 5 is negative 1x minus 2. And then, depending on what kind of a student you are, you may feel that you want to rearrange this so that it looks like negative x minus 2 equals 3. You add 2 on both sides. This brings down your negative x equals 5. Now notice that it could lead to confusion because remember that we have to be careful with the signs. So this is one of the problems with this other method. Because then you would have to divide, you would have to remember that you're switching the signs here. So that's another way of looking at it, but I would not do it that way at all. because you have -2 minus 3, and you're dividing by 5 minus 6, which is -1. Now, so you see that they work for all equations of this form. Now, there's another way. This is the simplest method of solving equations. Now let's come to another method. What if you have an equation that doesn't really have the variables on both sides in this way, but instead you had something like the following. You had parentheses. Sometimes they come up. So let's say you had, well, I'm going to give you the form first. X plus A times X plus B is going to be equal to another parentheses, and let's say we do X plus C plus times X plus D. Right, in this case, the formula is different. And what you're going to do instead is you're going to use the following, and this formula again also works always. It's going to be X equals C times D minus A times B D. Let's see if I can put it in here because my pen is just messing up always. Okay, so we'll do, in the numerator, you'll have C times D minus A times B as in boy. And we will divide that by A plus B minus C minus D. So make sure you have this formula before you can copy it, before we get into a practical problem. All right, so it's always the ones that have these parentheses. All right, now, let's say you had a problem that was, I'll leave the format up here. We'll use numbers now. So you're on a test and it says X plus 1 times X plus 3. Is equal to X minus 3 times X minus 5. Now imagine if you had to use distribution here. What a bloody mess. Imagine that for a moment. And pardon my language, by the way. But you'd have X plus 1 times X plus 3. It would take you forever. And so there's a way, if we use the formula, C times D minus A times B divided by A plus B minus C minus D. Well, let's do that. C times D. All right, let's label all the parts. That's going to be 3 times -3 times -5. Minus A times B. And in this case, it's going to be 1 times 3. And we're going to divide all of that by you go in order A plus B minus C minus D. So you have 1 plus 3, and since we're subtracting, it's going to switch the sign. So you have 1 plus 3 plus 3 plus 5. Now you can operate very easily because you just have to do the operations. You have 15 minus 3, right? -3 times -5 is positive 15. 1 times 3 is 3. Divided by 1 plus 6 plus 5, right? So if you calculate this, you will end up with, well, 1 plus 3 is 4. 4 plus 5 is 9. 9 plus 3 is 12. So now you have 15 minus 3, which is 12 over 12, which gives you a final answer of x is equal to 1. Done. Done. Took us less than 20 seconds once you manipulate the formula very well. All right, let's do another example. These are all time-saving techniques that you can use when you're taking your examinations, unless the problem tells you to do it another way. Sometimes I ask my students to do it a specific way, but just to test their knowledge on it. But if they don't specify that, then you don't have to. Let's say you had x plus 7 times x plus 12 is equal to x plus 6 times x plus 15. Well, again, we can manipulate this very easily. We have the formula is x equals c times d minus a times b divided by a plus b minus c minus d. So all we have to do now is, well, c and d are 6 and 15. So 6 times 15 gives you 90. Right? Minus, so it's going to be 6 times 15 minus, and then 7 times 12. Just to be clear. And then you do 7 plus 12 minus 6 minus 15. So let's manipulate these. That's going to give you, c times d is going to give you 90. And then you have 7 times 12 is 84. So you have 90 minus 84. Right? And then on the bottom, 7 plus 12 minus 6 minus 15. If you do all the operation, you're going to end up with x equals -3. Done, literally. So you can infer from these examples that you can easily determine this using certain formulas. And that's pretty much what you can do. Now, I made a video the other day on how to solve systems or simultaneous equations, systems of equations in a fast method. I gave you the rule, Cramer's rule, it's called. I also talked about the ratio relationship, and I also told you about how to solve them by comparison. So if you're interested in that video, it's available on my here on my channel. If this was useful to you, please subscribe. We're growing every single day. I am so proud of my subscribers because I see that there's a great interest in mathematics, and we're all going to be improving and growing together in this channel. So thank you all for watching, and please stay tuned for more videos this week.